In the village of Kofi, there lived a woman named Nalia who frightened everyone. Not because she was cruel or loud, but because of something strange she did every single night. At exactly 3 a.m., when the world was silent and dark, Nalia would wake up, take a bowl of raw meat from her small kitchen, and walk to the river. There, under the moon's cold light, she would wash the meat in the flowing water. Her hands moved slowly, carefully, as if she was performing a sacred ritual. Then she would return home without saying a word to anyone. The villagers whispered about her constantly. Mothers pulled their children away when Nalia walked by. Men avoided her path. She is doing witchcraft, some said. She is calling evil spirits, others claimed. Even the bravest hunters would not go near the river at night, afraid they might see her there with her bowl and her secrets. Nalia never explained herself. She lived alone in a tiny house at the edge of the village, surrounded by silence and suspicion. Her eyes were always tired, and her face looked older than her years. She spoke to no one unless she had to, and when she did, her voice was soft and sad. The children made up scary songs about her. The elders shook their heads and said she had lost her mind. But no one dared to ask her directly why she washed meat at 3 a.m. Fear kept them away. Curiosity kept them watching. And so, year after year, Nalia continued her strange ritual, while the village wondered and whispered and feared her in the darkness. But Nalia had not always been this way. Years ago, she had been different, young, happy, and full of life. She had friends, she laughed often, and people liked her. She worked as a farmer, growing vegetables and selling them at the market. Her best friend was a woman named Sena, the village hairstylist. Sena was beautiful and charming, with a smile that made everyone trust her. Women came from far away to let Sena braid their hair and listen to her sweet words. Nalia and Sena were like sisters. They shared everything: food, secrets, dreams. Nalia trusted Sena completely. She never imagined that behind Sena's beautiful smile was a heart full of jealousy and greed. Sena wanted what Nalia had. She wanted Nalia's happiness, her peace, and even the man Nalia was going to marry, a kind farmer named Kofi, after whom the village was named. One day, something terrible happened that changed everything. It started with a lie. Sena told the village elders that Nalia had stolen sacred items from the village shrine. This was a serious crime, punishable by exile or worse. The elders believed Sena because she was so trusted and so convincing. They did not listen to Nalia's protests. They did not investigate. They simply believed the lie. Nalia was dragged before the whole village and accused publicly. Her reputation was destroyed in moments. Kofi, confused and pressured by his family, broke off their engagement. Nalia's friends turned away. Her life fell apart like a house made of sand. But the worst was yet to come. Sena's lie did not just hurt Nalia, it awakened something dark and dangerous. The sacred items Sena had actually stolen herself carried a curse. By disturbing them and blaming another, Sena had broken an ancient protection that kept the village safe. That night, a terrible thing happened. A shadow appeared near the river, formless and cold. It was the spirit of a wronged ancestor, angry at the injustice and the broken oath. The spirit brought disaster. Crops began to die overnight. Animals fell sick and refused to eat. Children woke up screaming from nightmares they could not explain. The river, once clear and clean, turned dark and smelled of rot. The village fell into panic. People prayed and made offerings, but nothing worked. The darkness grew stronger each night. The elders gathered in desperation. They consulted the oldest woman in the village, a woman named Amma, who knew the old ways and the old stories. Amma was nearly blind, but her wisdom was deep. She listened to everything, asked careful questions, and then she closed her eyes for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was grave and tired. "Someone has committed a great wrong," Amma said. "Someone has lied and stolen and caused innocent blood to be shamed. The spirit will not rest until justice is done or until an offering is made every night to hold back its anger." The elders looked at each other nervously, but no one confessed. No one suspected Sena, who stood among them looking worried and innocent. Amma continued speaking, her voice growing softer. "The offering must be made at the hour when spirits walk, at 3 a.m. It must be raw meat, washed clean in the river, as a symbol of purification and sacrifice. This must be done every single night without fail, or the spirit will return and destroy us all." The elders were horrified. Who would do such a thing? Who would wake up every night at 3 a.m. for the rest of their life to protect a village that might not even appreciate it? Nalia, sitting alone in the back, heard these words and felt something break inside her. She had already lost everything: her friend, her future husband, her reputation, her happiness. She had nothing left to lose, but she still loved her village. She still remembered the people who had been kind to her before the lie destroyed her life. And deep in her heart, she knew the truth. Sena had done this. Sena had caused all of this suffering. But Nalia had no proof. No one would believe her if she accused Sena now. She would only be called jealous or bitter. So instead, Nalia made a quiet decision. She would take on the burden herself. She would become the one who made the offering every night. She would protect the village, even though the village had abandoned her. That very night, Nalia went to the market and bought raw meat with the last of her money. At exactly 3 a.m., she walked to the river and washed it carefully, whispering an apology to the angry spirit and begging it to be patient. The water felt freezing against her skin, but she did not stop. The next morning, the village noticed a small change. The air felt a little lighter. The river's bad smell faded slightly. The children slept more peacefully. People did not understand why, but they felt relieved. The elders thanked the ancestors and assumed their prayers had worked. No one knew that Nalia had started her lonely ritual. Weeks passed, then months, then years. Every single night, Nalia woke at 3 a.m., no matter how tired or sick she felt, and carried her bowl to the river. She washed the meat in silence, her hands freezing in the cold water, her heart heavy with sadness. The spirit seemed to accept her offering. The village remained safe. Crops grew again. Animals were healthy. Life returned to normal. But for Nalia, nothing was normal. She became a ghost in her own village. People avoided her because they saw her strange behavior and did not understand it. They called her crazy, cursed, dangerous. Nalia accepted the loneliness as part of her sacrifice. She told herself it was worth it if the village stayed safe. Meanwhile, Sena's life became better and better. She married a wealthy merchant and opened a big salon in the center of the village. Women lined up to see her. She wore expensive clothes and jewelry. She smiled and laughed and pretended to be kind. But inside, Sena carried a secret guilt that she buried deep. She never confessed. She never apologized. She simply enjoyed her stolen happiness while Nalia suffered in silence, protecting everyone from the consequences of Sena's evil. Years turned into a decade. Nalia's hands became scarred from the cold water. Her back ached from lack of sleep. Her eyes grew dull with exhaustion, but she never stopped, not once. The ritual had become her entire life. She had no friends, no family, no joy, only duty, only sacrifice. The village changed around her. Young people grew up hearing scary stories about the meat-washing woman. They dared each other to spy on her at night, though none were brave enough to get too close. Nalia became a legend, a warning, a mystery. Parents used her as a threat. Behave or you will end up like Nalia. But recently, something began to shift. Strange things started happening again in the village. Small things at first, easy to ignore. A farmer's chickens disappeared without a trace. A child claimed to hear whispers near the river at night. A woman woke up with scratches on her arms that she could not explain. People dismissed these incidents as coincidence or imagination. Then the incidents grew worse. More animals vanished. Goats, sheep, even a cow. The river began to smell strange again, just a little, like something rotten hidden beneath the surface. People started having nightmares again, waking up frightened and confused. The village elders met quietly, worried that the old curse was returning. But how could that be? They had done nothing wrong. They had made no mistakes. No one thought to connect these events to Nalia. No one thought to ask her what she knew. And then, something unexpected happened to Sena. Her perfect life began to crack. It started when her husband's business suddenly failed. Ships carrying his goods sank in storms. Thieves stole from his warehouse. Customers stopped coming. Within months, they lost almost everything. Sena, who had always been so confident and beautiful, began to look tired and worried. But worse than the money problems were the strange occurrences in her own home. Sena began to hear whispers at night, soft voices calling her name, accusing her of crimes she had tried to forget. She would wake up in the darkness, her heart pounding, certain someone was standing in the corner of her room. But when she lit a lamp, no one was there. Her hair, which had always been her pride, started to fall out in clumps. Her skin, once smooth and glowing, became pale and marked with strange bruises that appeared overnight. Her hands shook constantly. She could not eat. She could not sleep. She visited healers and doctors, but none could explain what was wrong with her. The women of the village began to whisper. Maybe Sena is cursed, they said. Maybe she did something wrong and now she is paying for it. Sena heard these whispers and felt panic rising in her chest. She knew the truth. Deep down, she had always known. The spirit had been patient, held back by Nalia's offerings, but now it was reaching for her specifically. It wanted justice. It wanted her to confess. Sena refused. She was too proud, too afraid. She told herself she had done nothing wrong. One night, unable to sleep, Sena decided to walk through the village to clear her mind. It was late, past midnight, but not yet 3 a.m. The streets were empty and dark. She walked without direction, just trying to escape her thoughts and the whispers that followed her everywhere now. Without realizing it, her feet carried her toward the river. She had not been to the river at night in many years. As she got closer, she heard the sound of water flowing and something else, soft splashing, rhythmic and steady. Curious and frightened, Sena hid behind a tree and watched. There, kneeling by the river in the moonlight, was Nalia. She was washing meat, just as the rumors said, but seeing it in person was different. Sena watched Nalia's tired face, her scarred hands, her bent shoulders. She saw the weariness in every movement, the sadness in every breath. And for the first time in years, Sena felt something sharp pierce through her heart. Guilt. Real, undeniable guilt. Sena's hands began to shake. Memories flooded back. She remembered lying to the elders. She remembered stealing the sacred items. She remembered watching Nalia's life fall apart and doing nothing to stop it. She remembered enjoying her stolen happiness while Nalia suffered alone. But before Sena could step forward or speak, she heard something else. A whisper, cold and clear, right next to her ear. Confess. Sena spun around, but no one was there. Her heart raced. The whisper came again, louder. Confess, or be consumed. Terrified, Sena ran home, her breath ragged, her mind breaking. The next morning, the village woke to shocking news. Sena had collapsed in the market, screaming and crying, saying things that made no sense. She kept repeating, "I'm sorry," and "I lied," and "it was me." People gathered around, confused and alarmed. Sena's husband tried to calm her, but she pushed him away, her eyes wild and desperate. The elders were called. They took Sena to Amma, the old wise woman who had advised them years ago. Amma was even older now, barely able to walk, but her mind was still sharp. She sat in her small house and listened as Sena sobbed and confessed everything. She confessed stealing the sacred items. She confessed to lying about Nalia. She confessed to letting an innocent woman suffer while she enjoyed a life built on betrayal. The elders listened in stunned silence. Some did not want to believe it. Sena had been so trusted, so loved. But the details she gave were too specific, too true. She knew things only the real thief would know. Slowly, the terrible truth sank in. They had punished an innocent woman. They had let a liar live among them in honor. They had failed completely. Amma closed her eyes and sighed deeply. "The spirit has been waiting for this," she said quietly. "It has been held back by Nalia's sacrifice for years, but now it is demanding what it is owed, the truth." She looked at Sena with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You must face the consequences of what you have done." The elders began to argue about what should happen to Sena, but Amma raised her hand for silence.
"There is something more important right now," Amma said, her voice firm despite her age. "Where is Nalia?" The elders looked at each other, suddenly realizing that no one had seen Nalia that morning. Usually, even though people avoided her, they would catch glimpses of her walking to the market or tending her small garden, but today she had not been seen at all. A young boy spoke up nervously. "I saw her last night, grandmother, at the river. It was very late. She was washing meat like always, but—" he hesitated. "She looked different. She looked like she was glowing, but also fading, like a shadow. It scared me, so I ran away." Amma's face went pale. She stood up quickly, faster than anyone thought she could move. "We must go to her, now. If Sena's confession has come too late, the spirit may have taken Nalia as its final price. She has carried the burden alone for so long that she may have become part of the curse itself." Fear rippled through the room. The elders rushed outside. Amma led them, leaning on a stick but moving with surprising determination. They arrived at Nalia's small house at the edge of the village. The door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, the house was cold and empty. Nalia's few belongings were untouched, but Nalia herself was gone. On the table was a bowl, the same bowl she used every night to carry meat to the river. It was clean and empty, but somehow it felt heavy with meaning. "The river," Amma whispered. "She is at the river." They all ran, their hearts pounding with fear and guilt. When they reached the river, they found Nalia. She was standing in the water, knee-deep, her arms hanging at her sides. Her eyes were closed, and her face was calm, more peaceful than anyone had seen it in years. But something was wrong. The water around her was glowing with a strange, pale light, and standing behind her, barely visible in the morning mist, was a shadow, tall, formless, and ancient. The elders stopped at the riverbank, afraid to move closer. Amma stepped forward slowly, her voice gentle. "Nalia, child, come back to us. You have done enough. The truth has been spoken. The spirit can rest now." Nalia's eyes opened slowly. She looked at Amma, and tears rolled down her face. "I am so tired, Amma. I have been so tired for so long. I cannot carry this anymore." "You don't have to," Amma said, her own eyes filling with tears. "We know the truth now. We know what you have done for us. We know you are innocent. Please come back. Let us help you. Let us make this right." But the shadow behind Nalia moved closer, wrapping around her like smoke. Nalia's expression changed, not to fear, but to understanding. "The spirit is not evil, Amma. It was only angry because it was ignored. It wanted someone to see the truth. I have been its voice all these years, washing away the lies, purifying the wrongs. But now," she looked down at her hands, scarred and trembling, "now it wants to take me home. It thinks I belong with it. Maybe I do." "No," Amma shouted, startling everyone. Her voice was stronger than anyone expected. "You do not belong to the spirit, Nalia," Amma said firmly. "You belong to the living. You have sacrificed enough. The spirit must understand that." She stepped into the water, ignoring the cold, and walked toward Nalia. The shadow shifted, and a low sound like wind through caves filled the air, but Amma did not stop. She reached Nalia and took her hands. "Spirit," Amma said, speaking to the air, "I am Amma, the eldest of this village. I speak for all of us. We have heard the truth. We have seen the injustice. We honor your anger, but we also honor this woman who gave her life to appease you. She has paid a debt that was never hers. Release her. Justice has been done." The shadow grew darker, and the water began to churn. For a moment it seemed like the spirit would refuse, but then Sena, who had followed the group to the river, stepped forward. Her face was pale and streaked with tears. "Take me instead," she said, her voice shaking. "I am the one who caused all of this. I am the one who should pay." The spirit paused. The water stilled. Everyone held their breath. Nalia looked at Sena with an expression that was hard to read. Anger, pity, sadness, all mixed together. "No," Nalia said quietly. "No more sacrifices. No more suffering. This ends now." She turned to face the shadow directly. "You have been heard. The village knows the truth. Justice has been spoken. If you take me, you will only be creating another wrong. Let this end. Please, let me go." The shadow remained still for a long moment. Then, slowly, it began to pull back. The glowing light in the water faded. The air grew warmer. The sound of wind disappeared. Nalia gasped and stumbled forward, and Amma caught her, holding her tightly. The spirit was gone. The curse was broken. The villagers rushed into the water, surrounding Nalia, holding her up, apologizing over and over. "We are so sorry," they cried. "We did not know. We should have listened. Forgive us." Nalia, exhausted and emotionally fragile, could only weep. She had held her pain inside for so long that now it poured out like a flood. Amma held her until she was calm. Then, with the help of the elders, they brought Nalia back to the village. For the first time in years, she walked through the village in daylight, not as a feared outcast, but as a hero. People lined the streets, bowing their heads in respect and shame. Children who had sung mean songs about her now stood silent, their parents' hands on their shoulders. Sena followed at a distance, her head down, her spirit broken. She knew that her punishment was just beginning. The elders would decide her fate, but even worse was the knowledge that everyone now saw her for what she truly was, a liar, a thief, a destroyer of an innocent life. Her wealth, her beauty, her reputation, all of it was ash now. When they reached the center of the village, the elders made an announcement. From this day forward, they declared, Nalia will be honored as the protector of our village. We will build her a new home, we will support her, and we will never forget what she did for us. In the days that followed, the village transformed. People brought gifts to Nalia, food, cloth, firewood, flowers. They asked her forgiveness. They listened to her story. They wept when they understood how much she had suffered in silence. Nalia, still exhausted and emotionally fragile, tried to accept their kindness, but it was hard. Years of loneliness and pain could not be erased in a few days. Amma stayed close to Nalia, helping her heal.
You do not have to forgive them right away, Amma said gently. You do not have to pretend that everything is fine. Take your time, heal at your own pace. Nalia nodded, grateful for Amma's wisdom. As for Sena, the elders decided her punishment. She was stripped of all her possessions, which were given to Nalia as compensation. She was banned from practicing as a hairstylist or any business in the village. She was required to work in the fields, doing the hardest labor, to understand humility and suffering. And she was required to publicly apologize to Nalia and the entire village every month for 1 full year. Sena accepted all of this without argument. She was broken, but perhaps that brokenness was the beginning of something. Maybe not redemption, but at least awareness. She began her labor in silence, her once beautiful hands now rough and blistered. Some villagers spat at her as she worked, others looked at her with pity. Nalia, when she saw Sena working in the fields, felt a complicated emotion. Not quite forgiveness, not quite satisfaction, just sadness for all that had been lost. Weeks passed. The village began to heal. The strange occurrences stopped completely. The river returned to its clear, healthy state. Crops grew abundantly. Children laughed freely. It was as if a heavy blanket had been lifted from everyone's shoulders. People began to relax and smile again. But Nalia struggled. At night, she would wake suddenly at 3 a.m., her body trained by years of ritual. She would sit up in bed, her heart racing, reaching for a bowl that was no longer needed. The habit was so deep that breaking it felt like breaking a part of herself. Amma visited her often, bringing tea and company. "It will take time," Amma said gently. "Your body and mind have been shaped by sacrifice. Give yourself grace." One evening, a young girl came to Nalia's new home. She was shy, maybe 8 years old, with big eyes and a nervous smile. "Miss Nalia," she said quietly, "I wanted to say I am sorry. I used to sing mean songs about you. I did not understand. I am sorry." She held out a small drawing she had made, a picture of Nalia standing by the river with a bright sun above her head. It was simple and childish, but it made Nalia cry. "Thank you," Nalia whispered, taking the drawing carefully. The little girl smiled with relief and ran off. After she left, Nalia stared at the drawing for a long time. Maybe, she thought, healing was possible after all. Maybe she could learn to live again, not as a shadow or a sacrifice, but as a person. 1 month after the truth was revealed, Sena stood in the village square to give her public apology, as required. A large crowd gathered, some curious, some angry, some indifferent. Sena stood on a raised platform, her head bowed, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked nothing like the confident, beautiful woman she had once been. Her hair was thin and tied back plainly. Her skin was tanned from working in the sun. Her clothes were simple and worn. She spoke slowly, her voice barely audible at first, then growing stronger. "I stand before you as a liar and a thief," she said. "I stole sacred items. I blamed an innocent woman. I destroyed Nalia's life to build my own happiness. I am the reason the spirit brought suffering to our village. I am the reason Nalia sacrificed herself every night for years. There is no excuse for what I did. I can only say that I am deeply, deeply sorry." She looked up and found Nalia in the crowd. Their eyes met. "Nalia," Sena said, her voice breaking, "I do not deserve your forgiveness. I do not expect it. But I want you to know that I see now what I did. I see the cost, and I will carry that knowledge every day for the rest of my life." Nalia said nothing. She simply looked at Sena with those same tired eyes, and then she turned and walked away. Some people booed Sena. Others nodded in approval of Nalia's restraint. Sena stood on the platform for a long time after everyone left, alone with her guilt. Months turned into a year. The village found a new rhythm. Nalia slowly, carefully rebuilt her life. She began farming again, and people bought her vegetables eagerly, not out of pity, but out of genuine respect. She made a few friends, cautious at first, but real. She even laughed sometimes, though the sound was rusty and uncertain, like an instrument that had not been played in years. Amma passed away peacefully in her sleep one night. The whole village mourned her, but Nalia mourned deepest. Amma had been her anchor, her guide back to life. At Amma's funeral, Nalia spoke briefly. "She taught me that sacrifice is noble, but so is healing. She taught me that I deserve to live, not just survive. I will honor her by choosing life every day, even when it is hard." Sena completed her year of public apologies and hard labor. She left the village afterward, quietly, without fanfare. Some said she went to another town to start over. Others said she became a wanderer, trying to find peace. Nalia heard the news and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Sena was simply gone, a chapter closed. Nalia never washed meat at 3 a.m. again. The ritual was over. The curse was broken. The spirit had moved on. But sometimes, on quiet nights, Nalia would walk to the river and sit by the water, not to perform a ritual, but just to remember, to honor the years she had given, to acknowledge the strength it took to keep going when everything was dark. And so the story of Nalia spread beyond the village of Kofi. Travelers carried the tale to other places. Parents told it to their children, not as a scary story, but as a lesson. Remember the woman who washed meat at 3 a.m., they would say. Remember that people who seem strange might be carrying burdens we cannot see. Remember that sacrifice is not always loud or obvious. Remember that truth matters, even when it takes years to come to light. In the village itself, Nalia became more than a person. She became a symbol. When someone was misunderstood or judged unfairly, people would say, "Let us not make the mistake we made with Nalia." When someone was asked to sacrifice too much, people would say, "Let us not allow another Nalia." The story changed the village's heart. Nalia lived many more years, quiet and simple years, but not unhappy. She never married, never became wealthy or famous, but she was respected, and she was no longer alone. On her deathbed, many years later, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her, she was asked if she regretted what she had done, all those years of sacrifice. She smiled, a real smile, and said, "I regret the suffering. I regret the loneliness, but I do not regret the choice. I protected my village when no one else could. That mattered. My life mattered." And with those words, Nalia closed her last eyes, finally at peace. The village erected a small stone by the river with these words carved into it: "Here Nalia washed away our sins. May we never forget." And they never did.